Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, our mission really is to take this pretty hefty stack of government planning documents and give you the sharpest, most analytical shortcut to understanding the UK's vision for its economic future.
Hmm.
We're sort of strapping ourselves into a time machine, looking 30 years ahead at what you could call the literal economic core of the UK global maritime trade.
That's right. Yeah, we're focusing on this strategic blueprint from the Department for Transport, the DFT. It's called Maritime 2050. And specifically, we're digging into the trade route map section.
Okay.
And this isn't just some policy paper gathering dust. It's meant to be a live document, a kind of synchronized plan. It outlines specific steps, responsibilities for government, for industry, over 3 whole decades.
Wow, 3 decades.
Yeah. So for any business, any policymaker watching the UK's place in the world, this is, well, it's pretty much required reading.
And the scale of it really highlights something fundamental about the UK economy, doesn't it? I mean, given its geography, the UK is just defined by the sea. The source material is completely clear on this. Globally, shipping moves, what, over 80% of all trade by volume?
That's the global picture, yeah.
But for the UK, that number jumps dramatically. It's 95% of all imported or exported goods by weight. Mind you, rely on ships.
95%. It's staggering.
So you just can't talk about the UK's economy, its resilience, its future trade deals without putting the maritime sector, right, smack bang in the middle of the conversation.
Exactly. And when the DFT talks about the maritime sector, we need to think broader than just, container ships and ports.
Right.
The strategy covers 3 really massive areas. First is the obvious one, the physical transport of goods and people.
Okay, moving things around.
Second is the high-value trade in the vessels themselves, marine equipment, technology, that sort of thing.
So building and selling the hardware.
Precisely. And third, and this might be the most critical bit for the UK's global standing, is what they call Maritime Professional Business Services, MPBS.
The MPBS. And those services, that's the real global differentiator, isn't it? We're not just talking cargo here.
No, not at all.
This is the specialized knowledge economy wrapped around global shipping. We're talking financing, insurance, the legal frameworks.
Shipbroking, classification.
Right, all those complex high-margin activities that, frankly, grease the wheels of trillions of dollars in global commerce.
Indeed. And to put a number on that, the source material, it noted that back in 2015, the industry directly added $14.5 billion to the UK economy. That's gross value added, GVA.
$14.5 billion. And jobs.
And supported 185,700 jobs directly. So this 2050 strategy, fundamentally, it's about making sure that this sophisticated economic core is not just kept ticking over, but is aggressively grown over the next 30 years, especially, as global competition really starts to heat up.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this roadmap then. It sounds ambitious. Our job today, for you listening, is to break down this sprawling 30-year action plan across its 3 distinct time horizons, right? Each with its own focus, its own challenges.
That's the structure.
We've got the urgent short term, that's the next 5 years or so. Sounds like it's mostly immediate fixes, competitiveness studies, that kind of thing.
Yeah, laying the groundwork.
Then there's the medium term, say 5 to 15 years out. This is where the UK really starts using its new trade policy powers.
Exactly. Actively shaping things.
And finally, the long term, 15 years plus. This sounds more geopolitical. Global leadership.
Very much so. It's about setting the agenda, leading on regulations globally.
Okay. And we need to track exactly who's on the hook for delivering each part. Is it DFT? Is it DIT? The Department for International Trade, the Foreign Office, industry itself?
Yeah, the responsibilities are key. It's a cross-government, cross-industry effort. Okay, so like any good strategy, it has to start with a pretty honest look at where things stand now. Strengths and weaknesses.
Right, the baseline.
So the document clearly establishes that baseline. The UK is recognized globally for skills and expertise in marine manufacturing.
But not just any manufacturing, right? This isn't mass market stuff.
No, exactly. This is the high-end capability. We're talking sophisticated marine systems, specialized equipment, design, complex engineering.
Naval vessels, submarines.
Yep. Naval vessels, submarines, high-end leisure crafts, super yachts, that kind of thing. And increasingly importantly, autonomous systems technology. Drones for the sea, basically.
Okay, so a high-tech manufacturing base, that's a crucial export foundation.
It is. But the global strength the strategy really leans on, the one it's most focused on protecting, is that knowledge economy you mentioned. The Maritime Professional Business Services, MPBS.
Centered mainly in London.
Predominantly London and the Southeast, yeah. And in some of these niches, the UK is, well, pretty much unparalleled.
So that's the sector they're really trying to nurture and grow.
Vigorously, yes.
Mm,
MPBS covers things like shipbroking matching ships to cargoes, maritime insurance, obviously think Lloyd's of London,
huge one.
maritime law, ship finance, which will come back to maritime accounting, consulting, classification societies, ensuring ship safety, ship management.
Okay, a whole ecosystem.
It's a whole complex ecosystem. And the UK is genuinely top tier across almost all of those. It provides, you could say, the intellectual infrastructure for a huge chunk of global shipping.
That definitely sounds like a powerful starting point. But, current strengths don't guarantee future success.
No, complacency is the enemy here.
And the stakeholders they interviewed for this document, they seem to have been quite candid about the risks, the things this 2050 plan absolutely has to tackle, and quickly.
They were. The source material flags 3 pretty significant risk categories.
Okay, what are they?
First, they point inwards to an internal gap, a significant decline in ship financing since the 2008 global financial crisis.
Right, 2008 changed everything in finance.
It really did. And this is quite a stark admission, isn't it? For a nation whose financial history is so deeply entwined with maritime trade. The point is, if you can't finance the ships,
You lose a critical part of the value chain.
exactly, you lose control.
So, just to be clear, the UK is still dominant in insuring the ships, providing the legal advice. But the actual money to build or buy the vessels, that's kind of dried up domestically.
That's a major part of the concern, yes. The capacity has diminished. Now, the second risk is external competition,
Rivals stepping up.
aggressively. Other nation-states rapidly building their own capabilities in professional services, in high-tech manufacturing. They're specifically targeting the market share the UK currently holds. Think Singapore, Hamburg, Dubai, Shanghai.
They're not standing still.
Not at all. And the third risk, which is maybe accelerating the fastest, comes from these huge external forces. Massive technological shifts, economic changes, environmental pressures,
Automation, decarbonization,
geopolitics.
all of the above. Things that fundamentally change the basic operating rules of global trade. If the UK is slow to adapt its ports and services to, say, green shipping corridors or new fuels,
Then that leadership position gets eroded pretty quickly.
instantly compromised.
Yeah.
And underpinning all of this, the entire strategy exists within this complex global regulatory world, doesn't it? The UK can't just dictate terms.
No, absolutely not.
Trade flows depend on institutions like the World Trade Organization, the WTO, the International Maritime Organization, the IMO.
And the International Labor Organization, the ILO,
Yeah.
for seafarer standards.
Right. So the UK's plan isn't just about domestic policy, is it?
No, a huge part of it is about strengthening the UK's position within those international bodies. That's crucial.
Why? What's the goal there?
The goal is to actively shape and develop what the document calls a transparent and fair global regulatory playing field. Take the IMO, for instance. It sets the global rules for ship safety, security, environmental performance.
So by leading discussions there,
By leading there, the UK can help guide the global pace of change on things like decarbonization targets, for example,
Yeah.
rather than just having to react to rules set by others. It's about influence.
okay, that makes sense. And crucially, this whole strategy, this document, it's written with the post-EU context fully baked in.
Absolutely. That's the backdrop to everything.
The entire 30-year vision seems predicated on using the UK's renewed independence.
That independence is the pivot point, strategically speaking. It means the UK retakes its own seat at the WTO.
And the government wants to be a big voice there, championing free trade.
That's the stated aim, yes. A strong advocate for free trade. And, critically, the UK is now free to go out and pursue its own free trade agreements, FTAs, unilaterally.
Right.
So those medium and long-term goals we'll get into, they're specifically designed to leverage that independence, to build deeper, sector-specific trade links with nations they often call key partners and strategic allies around the world.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting then. The rubber hits the road. If the risks are clear, that declining finance, rising competition, those big external forces, what are the urgent things, the actions for the next, say, 5 years to stabilize things and maybe grab some immediate opportunities?
Right, the short-term fixes and foundations. The strategy lays out 5 major prioritized actions for this initial phase.
5 key actions. What's number 1?
Action 1 focuses squarely on that core strengths we talked about, maritime professional business services, the MPBS.
Okay, protecting the crown jewels.
Pretty much. Recognizing that threat of competitors catching up, the DFT, working really closely with industry bodies like Maritime London, committed to commissioning a detailed study, a deep dive into the competitiveness of the MPBS sector.
Okay, a competitiveness study. That sounds vital if they're worried about complacency. What exactly is this study supposed to figure out?
It has a very specific job list. It needs to analyze the UK's MPBS performance, not just in isolation, but head-to-head versus competing hubs.
Like Singapore, Hamburg, Dubai.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those places actively trying to eat the UK's lunch, so to speak. It also needs to identify the real drivers of the UK's success beyond just, we've always done it, what makes it tick. And crucially, analyze recent developments, legal changes, financial shifts, political factors that might be hurting competitiveness right now.
So it's about finding the weak spots and getting immediate evidence.
Yes, providing an evidence base. Fast. And delivering clear recommendations for ministers, for other departments like the Treasury or DIT, on what needs to be done to keep that leading global position.
And when was this supposed to happen? This sounds urgent.
It was marked as extremely high priority, a short-term fix. The findings and recommendations were aimed for ministerial review during 2019. The urgency was absolutely key. They couldn't afford to wait 10 years to find out their most valuable service sector might be slipping.
Right, immediate intel gathering. Okay, What's action 2?
Action 2 moves into territory that's, well, politically interesting, maybe a bit contentious. Free ports.
Ah, free ports, tax breaks, special customs zones, that sort of thing.
That's the idea. The source material notes there was significant, enthusiastic interest from stakeholders ports, manufacturers especially, in setting up free ports in the UK. They're seen as potential hubs for manufacturing, for transshipment.
But the document doesn't just say, go ahead and build them, does it? It sounds more cautious.
It mandates an exploratory, evidence-based approach first, which, you could see as bureaucratic caution.
Or maybe just sensible planning, given these things aren't always a magic bullet.
I think it's probably the latter. A necessary strategic pause to avoid expensive mistakes. The immediate step outlined was to review all the existing evidence on viability, see where the gaps are in the studies,
Okay.
and then engage properly with industry on those findings before any big policy rollout. This short-term action is about making sure that if free ports do get the green light, they're set up properly in the right places for the right reasons and actually deliver economic benefits, not just, administrative headaches.
Makes sense. Okay, action 3. This one's led by the Department for International Trade, DIT, the export people. It's about export champions.
Yes, this is a very practical, ground-level initiative, trying to boost actual, tangible exports. DIT was tasked with fully supporting and implementing this network of export champions.
What are export champions? Are they government officials?
No, they're established, successful maritime companies themselves. Businesses with proven export track records who volunteer their time and expertise to mentor and guide smaller or less experienced companies wanting to start exporting or grow their exports.
Ah, so it's peer-to-peer support, leveraging existing industry success.
Exactly. Using that proven expertise to hopefully scale up the UK's overall exporting capability more quickly.
And what about that financial gap, the strategy flag, the ship finance issue, but also maybe finance for exporters more generally? How does DIT tackle that in the short term?
This is where UK Export Finance, or UKEF, comes into the picture. Their job, their mandate, is to continue providing financial support, things like guarantees, insurance, sometimes direct lending.
For who?
Specifically to ensure that viable UK exports, particularly from smaller companies, SMEs, don't fail just because they can't get the private sector finance or insurance they need. It's a direct measure to try and bridge that financing gap identified as a key risk. And alongside that, DIT was actively running targeted promotional campaigns, focusing on specific high-growth markets where they felt UK maritime services and goods could gain immediate traction.
Which markets were they targeting?
The document mentions China, Brazil, South Korea, Greece, a major shipping nation, of course, and key Asian countries, specifically Vietnam, Singapore, and Indonesia. So a very strategic focus, not just a scattergun approach.
Okay, very targeted. Action 4 sounds quite different, maybe more future-gazing. Arctic shipping routes.
Yes, this one definitely looks over the horizon. Stakeholders were apparently very keen to explore opportunities from the potential opening up of Arctic shipping routes, like the Northern Sea route due to melting sea ice.
A controversial topic, environmentally and geopolitically.
Hugely significant on both fronts. The strategy here isn't just about, finding faster routes to Asia. It's about establishing influence early on in a region facing intense geopolitical interest and competition.
So the UK isn't planning to just send ships up there on its own.
No, the approach is collaborative. The strategy mandates partnering with like-minded nations, other countries, with similar interests in safe and sustainable Arctic development,
To do what exactly?
to coordinate a mutual understanding on the specific services and technologies needed. Things like specialized ice-class vessels, advanced navigation systems, search and rescue capability, environmental monitoring, all the things you need for safe, secure, environmentally sound, and reliable maritime activity in the Arctic.
And why involve the Foreign Office, the FCO, alongside DFT? Why is it geopolitical?
Because control over Arctic waters and resources is a major sovereignty and security issue for Arctic nations like Russia, Canada, the US, Norway, Denmark. By setting up a regular forum for discussion with strategic allies.
The UK gets a seat at the table.
Exactly. It secures a voice in defining the operational rules, the environmental standards for the region. It helps prevent a situation where maybe one or two powerful actors dictate all the terms unilaterally. It's about ensuring future Arctic shipping, if and when it scales up, is managed safely and fairly.
Okay, that's a subtle but important point. Finally, Action 5. This sounds like the immediate, practical headache. Maintaining trade continuity after leaving the EU.
Yeah, this was arguably the single biggest logistical challenge in the short term. Before departure, the UK was part of around 40 EU free trade agreements, covering something like 70 countries.
Wow, that's a lot of agreements to replicate or replace.
A massive administrative task.
Yeah.
So the immediate priority, the thing that soaked up huge resources, was preparing for various scenarios to maintain those existing trading relationships as smoothly as possible,
The goal being.
to ensure continuity of benefits, to preserve the UK maritime industry's existing rights and market access under those deals, and basically provide certainty for businesses during a period of major upheaval. DFT's specific role here was crucial, feeding detailed maritime sector intelligence to DIT, the negotiators.
To make sure specific shipping or port interests weren't accidentally traded away in the rush.
Precisely. Ensuring those vital sectoral needs were understood and protected during the transition.
Yeah.
Right, so the short term, those first 5 years, was about fixing immediate problems, doing the analysis, getting the foundations right.
Stabilization, basically.
Exactly. Then the medium and long-term plans, this is where the strategy shifts gears. It's about actively using the UK's new independent status to, well, fundamentally redefine its global trading posture.
Okay, moving from reacting to proactively shaping.
That's the idea. This is where the real ambition of the 2050 strategy starts to show itself.
So let's look at the medium term first. Years 5 through 15, roughly. The goals here seem tied directly to national economic targets, don't they? With maritime playing a key role.
Very much so. The central economic target laid out is pretty aggressive.
Which is?
To collaborate closely with industry, to increase UK exports as a proportion of the UK's total GDP from 30% up to 35%.
That's a huge national target, not just for maritime.
It's a massive cross-economy goal. But the strategy explicitly identifies the maritime sector, both through its services and through physical exports of marine tech and ships, as absolutely key to making that happen.
So how do they plan to achieve that through maritime?
DIT is tasked with working directly with the maritime industry to develop a detailed 5-year action plan, pinpointing specific opportunities, specific subsectors where targeted government support, maybe finance, maybe trade promotion, can translate into measurable export growth for the sector.
And this medium-term phase, this is also prime time for negotiating those new free trade agreements, right? Using that independent trade policy.
Precisely. This is the designated period for aggressively going after new FTAs targeting specific markets.
Does the strategy name names? Which countries are they prioritizing?
It's quite clear on the initial geographical focus, yes. The government explicitly stated its intention back then to seek FTAs with major strategic allies, the United States first and foremost,
The big one.
and also New Zealand and Australia. Deep historical ties there.
Okay. U.S., Australia, New Zealand. Anything else?
Yes, and this is significant. Seeking accession to the Comprehensive Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP.
Right, the CPTPP. For listeners who might not follow trade pacts day to day, that connects, what, 11 Pacific Rim nations?
Yeah.
Japan, Canada, Mexico, Vietnam, Singapore.
That's right, a major trading bloc.
Why is joining CPTPP listed alongside big bilateral deals like the U.S.? What's the strategic logic?
It's about diversification, really. Diversifying market access and reducing reliance on any single partner. The U.S. deal targets, obviously, one huge consumer market. The Australia-New Zealand deals reinforce those historical links.
Hmm.
But joining CPTPP gives the UK a really significant trade anchor in the fast-growing Asia-Pacific region. It ensures UK service providers, those MPBS firms, and our high-tech marine manufacturers get preferential access to a group of markets responsible for, I think, around 13% or so of global GDP.
So for a maritime nation, getting better access to Pacific trading routes is a big strategic win.
A huge win, yeah.
Now, negotiating these big, complex deals takes years. The strategy talks about needing comprehensive consultation with industry, gathering views on market access barriers. How does that actually work? How do they turn industry wish lists into negotiating positions?
Yeah, that's a crucial step. The strategy uses this interesting phrase, defining the maritime sector's offensive and defensive interests.
Offensive and defensive interests. Okay, let's break that down. What would be an offensive interest for the UK maritime sector in these FTA talks?
Offensive interests are the areas where the UK is already strong, a global leader, and wants to push for the most open market access possible abroad.
Okay.
So for maritime, that definitely means going after any barriers that stop UK maritime professional business services firms from operating freely overseas. Making sure, for example, a UK maritime lawyer faces minimal hurdles practicing in the US or Australian market, or ensuring UK maritime insurers aren't disadvantaged,
Right. Pushing for service access.
and also securing better tariff deals for those high-end marine technology exports we talked about, autonomous systems, green propulsion tech, getting those into CPTPP countries with lower duties. That's playing offense.
Got it. So, conversely, what are the defensive interests they need to protect? What are they trying to shield?
Defensive interests are about protecting the UK domestic market or certain key strategic capabilities from negative impacts of an FTA.
Such as?
Well, it could involve making sure the UK retains the right to set its own safety standards for ships, or its own environmental regulations, or specific labor standards for seafarers operating in UK waters, even if a trade partner has lower standards.
So, protecting regulatory sovereignty.
Exactly. It might also mean providing necessary protections for strategically important sectors, like domestic shipbuilding, especially naval shipbuilding, or certain niche marine manufacturing areas, protecting them from, say, heavily subsidized competition from companies in a country that gains access through the FTA. So gathering all that detailed intelligence from industry allows DFT, the maritime experts, to really guide DIT, the trade negotiators, ensuring the final deal properly reflects the sector's long-term needs and capabilities, both offense and defense.
Right, balancing act. Okay, let's jump further ahead now, the long-term view. 15 years and beyond, we're talking 2035 to 2050 now. These goals sound less like specific deals and more about sort of the UK's overall stance in the world, geopolitical positioning.
That's a good way to put it. The long-term aspiration is really captured by this phrase they use, becoming a free trade champion.
A free trade champion. What does that mean in practice?
It means aspiring to lead by example. Through having what they call a liberal economy at home, continuously pursuing free trade globally, and actively championing a fair, proportionate, rules-based international system, both domestically and internationally. It's about establishing Brand UK as the global standard bearer for open, transparent, ethical commerce.
And part of that leadership involves shaping the rules at the very top level, doesn't it? The document mentions intensifying support for strong, free, open trade rules at the WTO.
Yes, this links directly back to the UK having its own independent seat there again. The goal stated in the strategy is explicit: to help rebuild global momentum for trade liberalization.
Which suggests they felt that momentum had stalled.
Well, there have certainly been global trends towards protectionism. So the UK, as one of the world's largest economies, sees its role, according to this strategy, as using its influence to push for multilateral agreements, argue against protectionist measures, and maybe even help reform WTO processes to make trade rules clearer and more efficient.
So using its weight to stabilize the global system makes trade easier for everyone.
That's the aspiration, yes, a kind of global system leadership role.
And beyond the WTO, that long-term focus also comes back to regulatory leadership at the IMO and the ILO. What are the big challenges there looking 15, 20, 30 years out?
The challenge is getting global agreement, building consensus, and defining the global standards for the future of shipping. The strategy talks about strategically developing that transparent and fair regulatory playing field.
Which means leading the debates on
the really big, difficult issues, especially environmental mandates. The pathway to zero-emission shipping is probably the biggest one. setting global standards for new fuels, for efficiency, for carbon pricing perhaps, and also maintaining high global standards for seafarer welfare and training via the ILO.
And success isn't guaranteed there, is it? That requires huge diplomatic effort.
Huge, sustained diplomatic and technical effort over decades. You need the expertise to propose workable rules and the diplomatic clout to persuade other nations. The key is ensuring regulations are effective, fair, proportionate, and crucially, actually enable trade growth rather than just strangling it with red tape. This long-term commitment shows the UK understands that future trade is going to be totally bound up with environmental performance and safety standards. And the plan is essentially to be holding the pen when those standards are written.
Okay. And then tying all this long-term vision together is this broad goal: maximizing trade globally by boosting relationships with both old friends and new allies.
Yes, that keeps the perspective global. It ensures the strategic focus isn't only on, say, the US or the Pacific, but maintains a worldwide, opportunistic outlook for UK maritime interests right through to 2050.
Okay, so you've got this incredibly ambitious strategy, spanning 30 years, involving massive global institutions, complex trade deals. It absolutely requires intense coordination to actually happen, right? It can't just live in departmental silos.
Absolutely not. Silos would kill it.
Yeah.
The implementation section really stresses the interlinkages,
Between who, mainly?
primarily between the Department for International Trade, DIT, they're the ones leading on negotiating deals and promoting exports, and the Department for Transport, DFT, who bring that deep, critical, maritime, sector-specific knowledge and expertise.
So DFT provides the what? DIT provides the how in trade terms.
That's a reasonable simplification, yeah, but it's a constant dialogue. And other departments are crucial too. The Foreign Office, the FCO, obviously involved in the geopolitical bits like the Arctic strategy.
And the Treasury, presumably they're involved in the finance aspects, free ports.
Exactly. Treasury underpins the financial mechanisms,
Yeah.
UK export finance, any tax considerations for things like free ports. It has to be a multi-departmental symphony, as you said earlier.
And that coordination needs to be ongoing, not just a one-off meeting. The document mentions a specific tool DIT uses: joint trade reviews. What are those, and how do they help the maritime sector?
Right. A joint trade review, or JTR, is basically a structured, collaborative deep dive conducted with a specific partner country. It's not an FTA negotiation itself.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's more like a dedicated working group. The source material mentions examples with China, India, Brazil. The aim is to systematically identify and try to remove specific, often fiddly, sector-based barriers that are getting in the way of smoother trade right now.
So practical problem solving.
Exactly. For the maritime sector, a JTR might look at things like streamlining visa processes for specialist UK marine surveyors needing to work in India, or addressing restrictive rules about moving money for maritime investments in Brazil, or getting mutual recognition of professional maritime qualifications with China.
So it's about oiling the wheels of existing trade even before you get to a full FTA.
Precisely. It's an active tool for continuous improvement in those bilateral relationships, optimizing things.
Now, while a lot of the strategy sounds quite high-level diplomacy, global institutions, big economic targets, the document does make a point of committing to an inclusive and transparent trade policy. What does that mean on the ground?
Yeah, they acknowledge that for trade policy, especially one with such long-term impacts, to be successful, it needs buy-in. It needs to be understood and supported by the people and businesses it affects.
So who do they commit to engaging with?
The list is pretty comprehensive. Parliament, obviously. The devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland vital, given their own maritime interests. Local government, businesses of all sizes, from the big players down to SMEs, trade unions, civil society groups, and the general public.
That engagement is crucial, isn't it? Because maritime needs can be very different depending on where you are in the UK. Scotland's shipbuilding versus London's financial services.
Absolutely. A one-size-fits-all approach wouldn't work. The strategy commits, at least on paper, to understanding and addressing those diverse regional and subsector needs.
Okay. Now, for a plan this long, 30 years, how do you stop it just, fading away? How do you monitor progress and make sure people stay focused? Governance must be key.
Paramount.
Yeah.
You can't just launch something this big and hope for the best. The structure they outlined is actually quite rigorous.
How so?
The strategy committed to providing detailed updates every 6 months on the progress of all the recommendations.
6 monthly updates. To who?
To a dedicated body, the Maritime Trade and International Policy Steering Board. And crucially, this board included representatives not just from DFT and DIT, but also, significantly at the time, from the Department for Exiting the European Union.
Ah, showing that immediate link to managing the EU departure transition.
Exactly. That 6-month reporting cycle is designed to ensure constant accountability, to keep the pressure on, make sure those short-term actions don't stall, and that the longer-term goals don't just get forgotten when ministers or civil servants change.
Accountability is vital. And just as important as internal checks is how the UK presents itself externally, right?
Right.
Showcasing capability.
Definitely. And the strategy highlights one key mechanism for doing that on the global stage. London International Shipping Week, LISW. It's specifically mentioned in the wider Maritime 2050 strategy, not just the trade part, as the critical ongoing showcase for UK maritime capability.
So it's the big marketing event.
It's the major platform
Yeah.
used to reinforce the UK's competitive advantages, particularly in services and technology, to that global audience of ship owners, financiers, insurers, tech providers. It's about attracting investment, promoting those export champions we talked about, generating business.
And one final point on implementation. The idea of this being a live document. How does that work in practice? Are they planning revision?
Yes, that's critical. The commitment wasn't just to publish this one strategy in 2019 and stick to it rigidly for 30 years.
Yeah.
The plan was to publish updated, detailed route maps in 5-year iterations.
Ah, so breaking it down into manageable chunks.
Exactly. It ensures that those broader, medium, and long-term goals get regularly reevaluated, stress-tested against the current global reality, which changes fast,
Huh.
and adjusted as needed. It really tries to embody that idea of a living, adapting strategy, not a static report. Tag, outro.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. What does this all mean for you listening?
Well, this Maritime 2050 trade route map, it's a frankly stunningly detailed plan.
It is comprehensive.
It seems to really try and balance those immediate necessary stability measures, the deep dive into competitiveness, the careful engagement on free ports with some really quite grand long-range geopolitical ambition.
Hmm.
That push for the 35% export target, chasing complex new trade deals like CPTPP, aiming for that global rule-setting leadership role at the IMO and WTO.
Yeah,
It's playing the long game.
it is. And it's also, you could say, a clear acknowledgement that while the UK does currently hold a leading position in many maritime areas, especially
Yeah.
professional services and high-end manufacturing,
It can't be complacent.
exactly, the global environment is fiercely competitive. That leading position has to be aggressively defended, strategically expanded, and constantly adapted over the next few decades. That seems to be the core message. What strikes me, listening back, is just the sheer level of joined-up thinking required. DFT, DIT, the Foreign Office, the Treasury, industry bodies like Maritime London. All these different players have to execute this incredibly synchronized effort.
Over decades.
Over decades, adjusting tactics every 5 years, as you said, all pulling in the same direction towards that ultimate goal, making the UK, in their words, the preeminent global leader in maritime trade.
It's a huge undertaking, and I think the strategy really is a testament to this fundamental belief that for an island nation like the UK, its economic future is, and perhaps always will be, profoundly secured by the sea.
Which leads us nicely to our final provocative thought for you to mull over. The entire strategy, as we've heard, aims to leverage the UK's strengths in services and high-tech manufacturing to hit that ambitious 35% export to GDP target. But we also noted the strategy's own quite explicit identification of that historical weakness, that gap in ship financing capacity, particularly since the 2008 crisis.
Yes, that financing piece is crucial.
So, given the reliance on mechanisms like UK export finance to try and bridge that shortfall in the short to medium term, here's the question. How fundamentally critical will the success of new, perhaps more ambitious fiscal measures be? Can the UK truly compete long-term and achieve that global trade leadership by 2050 against nations like China or Singapore who are pouring vast sums into building their maritime financial muscle without fully restoring its own strength as a primary global source of maritime finance itself? Is leadership possible without being the financier? Something to think about.